Hi, and welcome to Chinchilla Quest. In this, our very first video, we're introducing one of our main series, where I read popular stories and some of my own writing to my lovely chinchillas, so please, come on in and relax. This is Tanto. She's our grey chinchilla, and we have a face reveal for Puff coming around the corner. There we go, and that's Puff. Tanto and Puff, say hello. I'm Ivor K. Hill. I'm an author. You can read more about me in the description though, because Tanto and Puff are the true heroines of Chinchilla Quest. Today, I'm going to read Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi, and at the end of the video, I'll ask Tanto or Puff what they thought. Tanto is very polite, as you can probably tell, whereas Puff is a bit more of a discerning critic, let's say. So, we'll see what her opinion's going to be. Now, without further ado then, this is Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. Chapter 1. Once upon a time, there was a piece of wood. It was nothing special, just any old chunk of wood, like you might use in the fireplace to warm the room in winter. How it happened, I can't say. But the fact is that one fine day, this piece of wood just so happened to be in the shop of old Mr. Antonio the carpenter, although everyone called him Mr. Cherry, because the tip of his nose was red as a ripe cherry. When he spotted our piece of wood, Mr. Cherry rubbed his hands together and said, "What perfect timing! I need a new leg for my table." Then, without hesitation, he took up his axe and raised it overhead for the first blow. But he stopped, arms suspended in the air, because he heard a very tiny voice.
"Don't strike me too hard."
You can imagine old Mr. Cherry's surprise. He lowered the axe, twisting and turning to spot the owner of the tiny voice, but there was no one there. He looked under his table. Nobody. He checked in the cupboard under the stairs, and even in the basket where he left his wood chips and sawdust. Finally, he poked his head out the front door, but there was no one. "Ah," he said at last, laughing. "A figment of my imagination, that must be it. Now, back to work." Up went the axe, and then, thunk, he slammed it into the piece of wood.
"Yow!"
came the tiny voice.
"That hurt."
This time, Mr. Cherry was dumbstruck. His eyes bulged, his mouth gaped, and his tongue hung out over his chin like a gargoyle. He soon recovered himself, and, hugging his axe, he said, "Who is there?" "No one but this piece of wood." "Crying like a newborn? Nonsense, just look at it. It's nothing but kindling. It's for chopping and throwing on the fire." "Unless... is someone hiding inside it?" "If there is, I'll show him." And he snatched up the poor piece of wood, then, without mercy, thumped it against the wall. He waited, ears pricked. A minute, 2 minutes, but there was nothing. Mr. Cherry adjusted his wig. I am imagining things, yes. Nothing a good day's work won't fix, though." He returned the axe to its place on a hook on the wall and took up his plane. But just as the first flakes of wood fell, he heard it again.
"Stop!"
the tiny voice giggled.
"That tickles."
This time, poor Mr. Cherry swayed on his feet and all but fainted. Then he found himself sitting on the floor, and he was so changed he was unrecognizable. The end of his nose had turned blue with fright. Chapter 2. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. "Come in," said the carpenter. A little, jolly old man bustled through, and his name was Geppetto. But the local lads called him Polendina, because his yellow wig looked so much like a dish of polenta. And this presented two problems. First, Geppetto was very short-tempered. Second, he hated being called Polendina. He hated being teased at all. Woe on anyone who called him Polendina. "Good morning, Mr. Antonio," said Geppetto. "May I ask, what are you doing on the floor?" "Oh." Mr. Cherry couldn't tell Geppetto he'd been hearing things. "Ants, Mr. Geppetto, I have ants. I thought I'd teach them how to read, you know." "That's kind of you." Yes, it is. What brought you here, Mr. Geppetto?" "My own 2 legs, Mr. Antonio. Now, I have come to ask you a favour." "Indeed," answered the carpenter, getting to his knees. "I had an idea this morning." "Let's hear it then." "What do you think of this? I want to make a wooden puppet but not just any. I want one that can dance and fence and do backflips, and with such a puppet, I could travel around the globe. Oh, what do you think? Mr. Cherry went to congratulate Geppetto's fine idea, but a tiny, mysterious voice beat him to it.
Bravo! Wonderful! Congratulations, Polendina.
In an instant, Geppetto turned crimson with anger. Why do you mock me, Mr. Antonio? I am not mocking you. You called me Polendina?
No, I didn't.
Oh? Geppetto puffed up. Are you saying I called myself Polendina? No, it was you.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Thus followed a scuffle, one that ended with Geppetto's yellow wig in Mr. Antonio's hands and the carpenter's grey wig between Geppetto's teeth. Give me my wig this instant, Geppetto. Give me mine first. And so, the two little old men, each taking their own wig, shook hands and promised to be good friends forever. Now, Geppetto, said the carpenter, what can I do for you? I need a little piece of wood to make the marionette. Do you have any to spare? Mr. Antonio hurried to his bench, retrieving the piece of wood which had so frightened him earlier. But just as he was handing it to his friend, it bucked and it shook in his grip so hard that it flew from his hands, and it struck Geppetto's shin. Oh, well, thanks very much, Mr. Antonio.
Oh, upon my honor, I didn't do it.
Oh? Geppetto wriggled with constrained wrath. Did I do it to myself, then?
It's all the fault of this piece of wood.
Yes, I know the wood hit me, but you threw it at me.
I did not throw it at you.
That's a lie. Geppetto, don't insult me. If you do, I shall call you Polendina. You wouldn't dare, said Geppetto. Mr. Antonio bristled.
Polendina.
How dare you, you donkey!
Polendina.
You ugly chinchilla.
Polendina.
Geppetto, blind with rage, launched himself at the carpenter, and the second scuffle was even more stupid than the first. When all was said and done, Mr. Antonio had 2 more scratches on his nose, and Geppetto 2 buttons less on his jacket. Honours thus being even, they shook hands once more, and vowed to be good friends forever. Mr. Antonio handed Geppetto the piece of wood, this time without any trouble, and, thanking his friend, Geppetto went limping home. If you thought the first 2 chapters of Pinocchio were surprising, look out for the next few videos. The story is not what you expect. We have a bunch more stories coming in this series, including other classics like Dracula and Alice in Wonderland. Let us know in the comments if there's any stories you'd like to hear. We want to do tons more videos, of course, and there are the usual ways that you can help with that. You can like and share this video or subscribe to the channel. Now, this is the scary part for me because I'm going to find out if Tanto and Puff liked my voice work. Left side snack means they liked it, right side snack means they didn't, and Puff is still deliberating, I think. Okay, Puff, we can try Tanto. Let's try Tanto. Left side snack means you liked it, Tanto, right side snack means you didn't, and oh no. Well, that's okay. I tried my best, hopefully I can do better next time. There you go, Puff. Go. That is a wrap on our first ever video. I'm Ivor K. Hill. Thank you so much for joining me, Tanto and Puff on Chinchilla Quest.